This year, 2025, for those of you watching this in the future, presumably in a cave on a device that runs on a wind-up battery, was a good year for superhero movies. Earlier in the year, we had Thunderbolts, a solid new entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then this summer we had the 1-2 punch of James Gunn's superb Superman movie and another good one from the MCU, Fantastic Four First Steps. Plus, on TV, there was the outstanding second season of HBO Max's Peacemaker. And to go along with all of that, through Fathom Events, we also got a theatrical re-release of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. 2002's Spider-Man, 2004's Spider-Man 2, and 2007's Spider-Man 3. I got a chance to see all three, and even though I own the films and have watched them all more times than I can count here at home, getting to see them again in a theater on the big screen felt like attending a high school reunion. The only difference being I wouldn't go to one of my high school reunions if I was being paid to be there, whereas I gladly paid to see these movies again. Because the Raimi Spider-Man movies, particularly the first two, were so good and so popular, it's easy to forget what a long and winding road Spidey traveled to get to the big screen in the first place. The live-action Spider-Man movie had been in development hell for decades. Roger Corman had the rights for a while, but couldn't get anything made. Then Canon Films had the rights for a while, but couldn't get anything made either. Then Carolco Pictures got the rights, and James Cameron was attached to write and direct, but that movie never got made either. By the time Sony got the rights for Marvel in the late 1990s, there had been so many failed attempts at making a live-action Spider-Man movie, and so many infamously lousy superhero movies that did get produced in the meantime, Superman 3, Superman 4, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Spawn, that expectations for the Spider-Man movie, when it finally did go into production, were pretty low. Sam Raimi was an interesting choice for director. He was talented and idiosyncratic, independent with an immediately identifiable style and sense of humor. The cast was intriguing. Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst weren't who I pictured when I imagined live-action versions of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson, but they were good actors. And Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. You had me at Willem Dafoe. But good superhero movies weren't things we were conditioned to expect in 2002. There had been a few, even recently. 1998's Blade and 2000's X-Men had both been surprisingly solid, but they were the exceptions. And the true creative high points of the superhero movie genre, which for me and many others were still the first two Christopher Reeve Superman films, were more than 20 years old at that point. A great superhero movie, a truly great one, hadn't been made in a long time. All of this is to say, when I walked into the theater in early May 2002 to watch Spider-Man, I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't expecting much. What I saw remains one of the most wonderful surprises of my movie-going life. That first Spider-Man movie was so unexpectedly great. I honestly couldn't believe it. I went back to see it again and again, and having just watched it on the big screen yet again in the past couple of weeks, I can tell you, it still holds up. It's heartfelt, it's funny, its characters feel like real people, the death of Uncle Ben means something beyond just being a plot device, and his absence is felt for the rest of the film. There is a bit of regrettable homophobia in Spidey's banter with Bonesaw McGraw during the wrestling scene.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
But hey, a lot of us cishet dudes had a bit of regrettable homophobia back then. Hopefully Spidey grew out of it just like we did. Just like some of us did. What I really appreciated watching the movie this time was how obvious it was that Sam Raimi had made his Spider-Man movie, and had made choices to do what was best for his movie, even if that meant departing from the source material. Raimi is a Spider-Man fan. That's one of the main reasons he got the job, and his love for the characters and the comics they come from is apparent in all three of his Spider-Man movies. But he's also a filmmaker. A skillful, thoughtful, serious filmmaker who knows that his job is to make the best movie he can possibly make, not the most comics accurate one. Not everybody was happy with the choices he made. I'll never forget bumping into a friend of a friend at Walmart not long after Spider-Man opened. This guy was a huge comic book nerd, and when my buddy and I saw him, we immediately asked him what he thought of Spider-Man, expecting that he would have loved it. Instead, he gave a disappointed sigh and said, "Yeah, it was all right. I liked it pretty well, right up until this." Thank God nitpicking literalists like that never gained any significant influence, eh? Ha 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 ha! Sure, some pedantic dipshits who only wanted to see exact cinematic transliterations of what they saw on comics pages didn't like the fact that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man had organic web shooters rather than mechanical ones, or that Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin wore a helmet, but the movie was well loved by audiences, got mostly good reviews from critics, and made all the money in the goddamn world. $825 million global box office. In 2002. More than any superhero movie in history up to that point. Domestically here in the US, it grossed more than $400 million, making it the top grossing movie of the year. More than Attack of the Clones, more than Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, more than The Two Towers. Take that, fantasy nerds! All you losers who bought a ticket to watch movies about fucking hobbits and elves and wizards. More people in the United States went to see a movie about cool guy shit. Spider-Man. The success of that first Spider-Man movie is why we're still getting Spider-Man movies every few years, and it's also one of the big reasons why the Marvel Cinematic Universe exists. Spider-Man proved that superhero movies could be done well, and done well in a way that appeals to a massive paying audience. So, yeah, when I walked into the theater 2 years later to see Spider-Man 2 for the first time, my expectations were quite a bit higher. Those expectations were met and exceeded to such a degree that I went back to see the movie again and again and again. I wound up seeing Spider-Man 2 in the theater 7 times that year. I saw it with friends. I saw it by myself. I took my dad to see it. Do you have any idea how good a superhero movie has to be for me to take my dad to see it? He's not a superhero movie kind of guy. I don't remember what he thought of it. I think he liked it. Doesn't matter. The story's not about my dad, okay? The story's about me. Spider-Man. The story's about Spider-Man. I've now seen Spider-Man 2 in theaters 8 times, thanks to the Fathom re-release. It's my all-time theater-going champion. Magnolia and The New Superman are tied for second place at 6, if you're wondering. My exact favorite superhero movie varies from time to time, but since the first time I saw it, Spider-Man 2 has always been in that conversation. It is one of the best, if not the very best, superhero film ever made. What makes it so good? Howard Hawks, the legendary director of classic films such as the original Scarface, Sergeant York, Red River, and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, said that the recipe for a good film is 3 great scenes and no bad ones. Spider-Man 2 has this scene between Peter and Aunt May where he reveals to her the truth about what happened the night Uncle Ben died. This other, even better scene between Peter and Aunt May where she delivers her "I believe there's a hero in all of us" speech. This action sequence involving a train that is practically a movie unto itself and which I think is the best sequence from any superhero movie ever. That's 3 right there. And there are more great scenes in the film than those. If a movie had one of those 3 scenes I just mentioned and was otherwise not bad, you'd probably walk out of the theater thinking, that was a pretty good movie. Spider-Man 2 has all 3 and more. It also has a fantastic final shot. This one of a worried Mary Jane watching as Spidey swings off into the city to save the day again. It's a quintessential Spider-Man ending. Peter and MJ have finally gotten together. MJ has just encouraged him to respond to a developing emergency as Spider-Man, giving him a "go get him, tiger." And we've seen Spidey web-slinging his way across New York in an absolutely gorgeous and preposterous effects shot. It's epic, it's heroic, it's Peter Parker with everything going his way at last, but maybe not so much. That parting glimpse of MJ lets us know that things aren't as perfect as Peter thinks. It's a brave choice to end the film on such a downbeat and ambiguous note, but that final shot of MJ standing in the window makes for a more intriguing hook for the next movie than any "hey kids, look who it is" style post-credit scene I've ever watched. As for that next movie, in his very positive review, Mark Dudchik of Mark Reviews Movies wrote that if Spider-Man 2 was the superhero movie as soap opera, then Spider-Man 3 is the superhero movie approaching opera. My overall assessment of the movie isn't as glowing as Mark's is in that review, but I agree with the comparison. Spider-Man 3 is operatic, grand, epic, ambitious, and absolutely packed with characters, themes, and plot. It's an overstuffed movie. That's what pretty much everybody says, and I agree. It's the only one of Raimi's 3 Spider-Man movies that feels like the product of Raimi being forced to serve a master other than himself. The impression I always get when I watch it is that Raimi wanted to make a movie with the Sandman as the primary villain and the Peter versus Harry conflict as a significant B-plot, and he was obliged to include Venom as a favor to the studio. Also, that's not just my impression, that's what actually happened. There's so much going on in Spider-Man 3 that when you list the important characters and plots, it starts to sound ridiculous before you're even through. You've got Peter, MJ, Harry, the Sandman, Eddie Brock/Venom, Gwen Stacy, plus the extended supporting cast of characters like Aunt May and J. Jonah Jameson and the gang at the Daily Bugle. There's a story about Peter and Harry where they fight, then Harry suffers amnesia and forgets that he hates Peter, then gets his memory back and fights Peter again, and then ultimately forgives Peter. There's a story about Peter and Mary Jane and Peter fucking up their relationship because he gets too wrapped up in his Spider-Man stuff. There's a story about the Sandman being revealed as the guy who actually shot Uncle Ben, in addition to his backstory involving his sick daughter and his transformation into, the Sandman. There's Peter's corruption by the Venom symbiote, and the symbiote eventually being passed to Eddie Brock, who uses it to get revenge against Peter, who he hates. There's Mary Jane and Harry briefly rekindling their relationship, which Harry then uses against Peter once his memory returns. There's Mary Jane's struggles with her acting career. This is one movie. That's not even everything. And yet, I like Spider-Man 3 more every time I watch it. Yes, it does way too much, but it also does a remarkable job of keeping its many plates spinning. There isn't enough room for all of its plots and character arcs to breathe the way they really need to, but it never abandons a plot or a character for too long. Everything and everyone at least gets a resolution. A few of those resolutions are even pretty good. There's a lot about Spider-Man 3 that doesn't work as well as it should, but the movie works when it needs to. The douchebag Peter sequence, after Peter has put on the symbiote-infected black Spidey costume and given himself over to its influence, is excellent. The musical montage is hilarious. Some folks have found it cringeworthy, but many of these are people who don't recognize that it's supposed to be a joke, that we're supposed to think Peter is acting like an embarrassing goof. And I don't care about the opinions of those people because, frankly, I don't need that negativity nor that piss-poor media comprehension in my life. The origin of the Sandman is incredibly well done. The scene of him putting himself back together for the first time is lyrical and lovely. Topher Grace gets some really funny moments as Eddie Brock. The entire Peter versus Harry story is way too rushed and crowded out by other elements in the film to play the way it's meant to, but damn it if that final scene of a dying Harry forgiving Peter doesn't get me every time. The scene where Sandman expresses regret to Peter for killing Uncle Ben, and Peter forgives him, and Sandman blows away on the breeze, is moving and beautiful. And the ending is good. After a tumultuous separation, Peter and Mary Jane reunite, embracing in a display of love and absolution that serves not only as an ending to this movie, but, as it turns out, a fitting conclusion to the trilogy. Both Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 end with Peter moving away from Mary Jane, emotionally and in terms of actual physical distance, after a fleeting moment of togetherness. Spider-Man 3's ending is the opposite of that. After spending most of the movie estranged from one another, they reunite. Call me a romantic, call me a pervert, but it works for me. 23 years after it started and 18 years after it ended, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy is still a high watermark for superhero movies. Andrew Garfield, who took over the character for the two Amazing Spider-Man films that followed on the heels of the Raimi trilogy, was terrific, and Tom Holland has been outstanding, but for me, and for a lot of fans around my age, it was the Raimi trilogy that defined Spider-Man. I mentioned earlier that before I saw the first movie, Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst weren't exactly who I pictured for those characters. Now I can't think of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson without thinking of those two actors. Rosemary Harris was the perfect Aunt May. She looks like she was imported directly from a Silver Age Spider-Man comic, but breathes life and dimension into the character, making her more than the cliche/plot device she often was in the early years. Selfless, loving, forgiving, wise. She's the mother or grandmother we should all be so lucky to have. As the Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe created one of the great live-action cartoon supervillains, and somehow Alfred Molina and Thomas Hayden Church were able to follow his act as Dr. Octopus and the Sandman respectively, each playing their villains with not only believable menace, but also tragedy and humanity. And hell, J.K. Simmons was so perfect as J. Jonah Jameson that he's the only one who wasn't recast when they introduced his character into the MCU version of Spidey. Sam Raimi clearly has knowledge of and affection for Spider-Man comics, but his movies aren't beholden to their source material. The Raimi trilogy is what it is precisely because it is Sam Raimi showing us his Spider-Man. Raimi's take on Spider-Man has its own unique, definitive characteristics, but it also contains the heart of what has made the character so beloved for so many years. Peter Parker is a working-class hero. He's always broke. He spends 2 of the 3 films living in a shitty one-room apartment. When Spider-Man 2 begins, he's working as a pizza delivery guy to supplement the meager income he makes selling photos to the Daily Bugle. Also in Spider-Man 2, Aunt May falls behind on her mortgage and is forced to move out of the house where she and Uncle Ben spent their lives. These characters struggle with problems that, unfortunately, are familiar to all of us. Speaking of Uncle Ben, his loss reverberates through all 3 films. His absence is felt. We get repeated reminders in all 3 movies of how much Peter and Aunt May miss Ben, how they loved him, and how powerfully he influenced their lives. Ben was obviously a role model for Peter, and we see that, but we also see that Peter isn't a perfect hero. That's another crucial ingredient that makes Spider-Man special among superheroes. He's flawed, deeply flawed. Not in the same way as many modern interpretations of these characters. He's not grim or depressed or amoral. He's not gratuitously angry or violent, until the symbiote brings those qualities to the surface in the 3rd film anyway. He's imperfect in the same way the rest of us are. He's selfish, he's impatient, he's impulsive, he's susceptible to having his ego stroked. He tries to do the right thing, but sometimes he messes up and has to go out of his way to make things right. And he pays a price for being Spider-Man. He uses his powers to fight the good fight, to help those in need, but being that kind of a hero means never being able to lead a normal life. And it means continually letting down the people he loves. Raimi and his collaborators don't forget any of that. At the conclusion of the first film, Peter describes being Spider-Man as a gift and a curse. Depending on how you look at it, you could say the same thing about these 3 movies. They set a standard for superhero movies. Spider-Man 2 in particular set a standard so high that only a few films in the genre have even approached it since. That level of both quality and popularity will be difficult to reach again, given the current obsession with shared universes and crossovers, and the problem of risk-averse studios being more interested in pandering to existing fan bases than in telling stories that might attract new ones. Compare Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy to his own more recent superhero film, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. It's a fun movie, with occasional flashes of that classic Raimi wit, as well as the director's signature quirks and splashes of personality, including the requisite Bruce Campbell cameo. It's one of the better, or at least more stylistically interesting, post-Endgame MCU films. In its best moments, it feels like a Sam Raimi movie, exhibiting a degree of directorial distinctiveness that is preciously rare in its franchise. But ultimately, it's just another patch in a seemingly endless quilt. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is so big and so ever-expanding that everything, even the good stuff, eventually fades into the whole. I am hopeful that the DC Comics answer to the MCU, James Gunn's DCU, will be able to find a way around this problem by emphasizing the individual films that make up the shared universe, rather than prioritizing the shared universe at the expense of the films and the filmmakers who create them. So far, so good on that front, but only time will tell. The dozens of films and TV series of the MCU all blur together into a single mass after a while, but Raimi's Spider-Man films remain works unto themselves. Even the very best parts of the MCU, Iron Man, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Black Panther, the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and yes, the MCU's own Spider-Man films, can be difficult for me to recall in detail because there's just so much. But I remember Spider-Man. I remember Spider-Man 2. For better and for worse, I remember Spider-Man 3. In fact, as flawed as it is, and as much as I like the MCU, despite my criticisms of it here, I'd take Spidey 3 over a significant chunk of the MCU. It's overstuffed, but at least it's overstuffed with its own stuff, not with scenes and characters that are only present to set up something for a completely different movie. Thanks mostly to Gunn's Superman movie, and also, to a lesser degree, the releases of 2 solid new MCU entries in Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four First Steps, and oh yes, let's not forget the outstanding second season of Peacemaker as well. The superhero movie genre feels more energized in 2025 than it has in many years. As I look ahead to more promising superhero films in the years to come, Matt Reeves' The Batman sequel, Supergirl, Gunn's Superman sequel, the 4th Spider-Man film to star Tom Holland, and others, I'm grateful to have gotten the gift of being able to watch the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy on the big screen once again. To look back and remember the movies that gave me hope that maybe the superhero movie dark ages were over and the Renaissance had begun. When I was seated in the theater watching the first film a couple of weeks ago, I got unexpectedly choked up. Me getting choked up while watching a superhero movie isn't unexpected. What caught me a little off guard was when. It was right after Spidey rescues Mary Jane from the Green Goblin's attack during the festival. They swing away to safety, MJ clutching Spidey around his neck. They land in a rooftop garden. Spidey lets her go. And...
Wait! Who are you?
You know who I am.
I do?
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Spider-Man 2, Aunt May's I Believe There's a Hero in All of Us speech, the people on that train catching him, bearing him back inside, gently laying him down, the kids handing him back his mask and saying, "We won't tell nobody." I get choked up just thinking about that. Spider-Man 3, the Sandman showing remorse for killing Uncle Ben, trying to explain that he didn't want to become this thing he is, that he only wants to help his daughter. Peter tearfully telling him, "I forgive you," takes me out every time. But that scene from the first one, "You know who I am, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man," that's never hit me like that before. What was it? The way Peter can be close to MJ as Spidey, but not as himself? The longing in his voice when he says, "You know who I am"? The almost giddy, upbeat tone of "your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man"? I don't know. Maybe a little bit of all of that. Maybe something else too. There I sat, sentimental sap that I am, suddenly misty-eyed, in the dark, looking on as Spidey swung away from Mary Jane into the city, letting out a joyful woohoo as he went. And I smiled. And I thought to myself, it's Spider-Man.